Hello everybody, welcome to our webinar today. I think we're going to get started. My name is Laskosky and I'm a librarian here at Library Development Services at Yellowhead Regional Library. And today we are going to be talking about to genrefy or not to genrefy. That is the question. And I do have a bit of experience with genrefication. I have actually de-genrefied a collection. So we're going to go through a bit of a process today for genrefying and de-genrefying. And I will start off by saying that genrefication is primarily done in school libraries, but it is becoming more popular in public libraries. So no matter what librarian, this will work for you. So today, we're going to be going through the advantages and drawbacks of genrefication. And I know that's what most of you came for, so we're going to start off with that. Then I'm going to take you through a bit of a genrefication process if you decide to genrefy your collection. And then I'm also going to offer you a bit of insight to some readers' advisory resources that you can use as well. And then there will be some time at the end for questions. So to start off, I always like to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So when we talk about genrefication, it is simply the process of organizing, classifying, and categorizing materials according to genre. And while this may sound easy, it can actually be quite complex and requires a lot of careful planning and consideration. So I wanted to make sure that we all had that base level of understanding before we really get into our topic today. So as always, I like to start off with the good things because who doesn't like to start off the day on a good point? So these are some of the advantages of genrefying your library. I'm going to take a closer look at each one of them, and you will see as we go through that they will relate to each other in one way or another. So one of the main advantages of genrefication is that books are easier to find, and literacy and discovery are two key aspects of that. So for literacy, library users can actually increase their literacy skills if your collection is genrefied because they're able to find books that suit their interests and they'll be more inclined to visit the library. And because those books are easier to find, they'll enjoy reading more and they'll become more confident when they come into the library to pick out what they want to read. So they might actually increase their reading and again, increase those literacy skills. And that goes hand in hand with discovery. Again, books are easier to find, so your library users are going to feel empowered and confident when they step into your space. And rather than searching through all of the books you have, they're going to be able to easily discover what books they want. And again, they may potentially start reading more and visit the library more often. And literacy and discovery are one of the reasons why school libraries are prone to genrefication more so than public libraries. For students who are just starting to develop their reading interests, it can be really easy for them to find something to read. And so that's why school libraries tend to go toward genrefying their collections. Another advantage of genrefication is an increase in circulation. So since it's easier for people to find books that they like, more books in your collection might actually start circulating. And this may mean that items that weren't previously being taken out are being taken out more now because they're easier for people to find. And this can also be really beneficial for you as a librarian or a library staff member because you'll start to see what types of books are most popular and what's going out a lot. And that might help you later on with your collection development. As I've said numerous times already, and I'll say it more throughout this presentation, genrefication makes it easier for library users to find books they're interested in. But genrefication can also make your job more efficient. So one big advantage to genrefication is that you know what genres your collection has, and you become more familiar with them, you become more comfortable. And this can make it really easy for you to make recommendations to library users. And you can easily identify the genres that you have and point people in the right direction quickly. So it really helps your job performance as well as helping your library users. The last advantage I want to talk a bit about is collection knowledge. So as I've said, genrefication increases efficiency. You can make those quick recommendations and you'll learn more about your collection and what your users want. And all of that is to say that genrefication can make you feel more confident in your knowledge of your collection, but also in yourself. So when you're more familiar with your collection, you feel confident helping people find what books they want to read or looking for whatever genre they want to try or a new genre they want to read. So as much as genrefication helps your library users, it can also really help you as a library worker. Now, as with most things, there are always some drawbacks, and this isn't to say that genrefication is terrible and you shouldn't do it, but there are some things you should take into consideration when you are genrefying your collection. And we're going to look at each of these more closely again. So the first one is perhaps what I think is the most obvious or the most clear drawback of genrefication, which is that it can be limited. So people can get stuck in one genre, which isn't always a bad thing, but sometimes for young readers, we want to encourage them to try reading a lot of different genres and expand their interest to really find what they're interested in and what they enjoy. Now, some people might be comfortable just reading one genre. I myself am comfortable just reading 2 or 3 different ones quite frequently, and that's fine. But it is something we have to consider when we're genrefying a collection, that it could potentially be very limiting to some readers. Uncommon library standards can be a bit confusing. So when you are genrefying your collection, you have to decide how you're going to present your books. So are you physically going to label them? Are you changing the call numbers? Are you going to do both of those or neither? How are you going to identify them? Now, if you're changing the call numbers in your online catalog, you want to make sure that it's still easy for library users to find books, especially on their own. So for example, I previously worked at a library where just the young adult collection was genrefied. So the call number was YA to identify the collection, and then it had the abbreviated genre name, so FAN for fantasy, and then the author's last name. And each genre was in its own section. So this made it kind of confusing for library users and library workers sometimes to find specific books they were looking for because they were in many different locations. So you want to make sure that you label and catalog and organize your books so that it's still easy enough for people to find books on their own. Another drawback is that genrefication is time consuming, and that is pretty much all I can say about that point. It is a long process and it can take months to complete, especially if you are going to be doing it alone. So you really need to consider the size of your collection, be realistic about the time it's going to take, and think about, is it really worth it? Is this really going to achieve what I want if I genrefy my collection? So that's just something else that you have to consider. These two, in my opinion, are perhaps some of the biggest drawbacks for genrefication. So the first one is separating authors. So authors can write in multiple genres. They don't always just write fantasy or just write mystery. Some authors write in multiple genres. So if someone's really interested in a particular author, but has to look through multiple different sections to find all their various books, it can become really frustrating for them. So that's another point we have to consider. Similarly, books also don't fit into one neat and tidy category all the time. Sometimes they could potentially be filed under multiple genres. And this is when you need to look objectively at what genre a book falls into, which could differ from where somebody else puts it or where another library puts it. So again, that's something you have to consider. And I'll show you an example. So one example of a book in multiple genres can be seen here on Goodreads. And I will get into Goodreads a bit later, but right now I just want to look at the multiple genres this particular book can fall under. So this is a book I read in the last few months, and I thought it would be a good example. So the challenge with genrefying becomes, do you put it under fantasy because that seems to be what's most popular, that's what most users on Goodreads put it under, or does one of the other genres actually suit better? And this is where it can become really tricky. And as I said, we'll talk about using Goodreads a little more later on to genrefy your collection. But for now, I just want you to see how it can be a little tricky when a book falls into multiple genres. So one more thing I wanted to mention when it comes to genrefication is labels. And labeling books is something you really do have to think about objectively. So while physically labeling books can be helpful for library users, it can also be extremely harmful for some people. And we see this primarily with LGBTQ plus books, but it can apply to any genre. If you have, a chick lit genre, romance, any genre it can apply to. So physical labels can cause library users to avoid certain books either because they have a bias or they're uncomfortable or they just don't want people to see what they're reading. And this really plays into privacy and freedom to read within the library. And that could be a whole presentation on its own. So I won't get too into it today, but I wanted to mention it because it's something we really do need to consider. It's a very important aspect of the genrefication process. So just remember to think about why you're labeling your books and also how it can be useful, but also harmful to your readers. So now that we've gone over the advantages and the drawbacks of genrefication, you can see that there's no really one-size-fits-all solution, but there are some good things and also things you really do need to consider. And again, we're not saying genrefication is necessarily good or bad. It depends on what works for you and how you want to present your collection to your users. So for those of you who are considering genrefying, or maybe you've already started, I'm going to provide you with a bit of a process you can follow if you choose. You don't have to. And I will say this process can be used to genrefy your collection and de-genrefy it. Obviously, if you're de-genrefying your collection, you won't use all the steps. You might just use a few of them. And again, as I said, this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. You can make adjustments to this process if you need. You can not use it at all if you want, but sometimes it's nice to have a good starting point if you aren't exactly sure where to go or how to get started. So the very first thing you need to do is identify your purpose. You need to know, why are we doing this? What are our goals and outcomes for this project? And this is going to help you with that big picture aspect of the project. And it's important to know that overarching goal because that's going to help you focus when you get down to those nitty-gritty details. It's going to help you work out how to approach those and why you're doing those steps. So for example, if you're genrefying because you want to make it easier for your students or your patrons to find books, that's also going to affect how you decide to catalog and label your materials. So knowing the purpose and the goal of your project is going to help you determine how to best handle those details. So we have to really think about the why. And once you've determined your purpose, you can really start to create your plan. So this is a very simple format here that I actually followed when I did my own project. And the very first thing you have to do is ask for advice. So whether you're genrefying or de-genrefying, you should try to get some advice or outside perspectives from other people. And this is going to allow you to talk through the process, and it's going to get you thinking again about that purpose. But it might also bring up some things that you hadn't considered before because everyone thinks about these processes differently. So this is a very easy starting point because again, we're thinking about the why, we're getting a lot of different perspectives, and it might help you figure out how to start implementing your project. Now, creating a process, space planning, and creating a timeline kind of all go together. You need to create your process for the project so you can identify how you're going to go about genrefying or de-genrefying, how you're going to manage your physical space to accommodate the project. Also, how are you going to make sure that books are still available to your users to take out? And you also have to consider the time because, again, we said this is very time consuming, so you have to be very realistic about it. Now, perhaps the most important step of this whole plan is to select your genres. And that's what we're going to look at in more detail because it is really the big central part of the genrefication process. So I've listed a few popular genres here, and actually there could be more. You could have genres such as realistic fiction, you could have horror, you could have any number of genres you want. But these are some of the most common ones that I've seen used in libraries, and you can see that that is already 7 possible genres. And that's quite a few, and as I said, you can see how we can split it up even further. So we have to think, even though there are 7 genres that we could choose from, do we really want our users to have to look in 7 different places to look for the books they want to read? So maybe when you go to select your genres, you're thinking you want to look through your books and see what you already have for genres and go from there. But some books maybe don't have a clear genre or they have multiple ones, so you're not sure which one it might fit into better. There are a number of options you can use to help you determine which genres will work best for your collection and for particular books. And you can also use these to accurately pick which genre a book falls into. So our first example, as I said, we would get back to Goodreads. And Goodreads is really great if you're looking for the most popular genres. But I'm going to show you, it might take a minute to pop up. But if we go to the Goodreads site, again, we're looking at that same book. When we scroll down, you can see again all the genres listed here, but you can see there's this button that says Edit Details. And if I click on that, it asks me a bunch of questions, and one of them says, what is the genre of this book? And I can add answers. So whatever genre I think this book falls into, I can add that, and it's going to affect the metadata and what genres show up for this book. So that's something you have to take into consideration if you're using Goodreads to genreify your collection, is that users can influence the metadata. So that's why you see there's all of these users selected fantasy, all of these users selected LGBTQ. So that's just something you have to think of. And again, I'm not saying that Goodreads is a bad option, but you do just have to remember that people influence the data. So rather than being objective, it's quite subjective. Another option we have is Novelist, and you actually have access to Novelist through YRL in your e-resources. And you can see that this has a lot of the same fields as Goodreads. It has all of the genres listed, has all the descriptions and everything. The difference is Novelist users cannot edit it. I can't go in and add a genre to it. And it also doesn't rank the genres like Goodreads. It just says these are the genres that are associated with this book. Novelist does have a link to Goodreads down here at the bottom. So if you do just want to see what some of the popular genres are, it can show you there. But that's one positive note about Novelist, is that you can't edit it. So you know it's very objective and it's just, here's the information, this is what it is. Another really great option for selecting your genres can actually be found in Polaris using your bibliographic records. So I'm sure you probably all know about the MARC records that are associated with your books, but I just want to point to some important information for genrefication. So if you look at the 655 field here down at the bottom, this is your genre form. And this is really useful for genrefication because it shows you what genres are already associated with that specific book. So it makes it really easy to match your information. So the information that's in your bibliographic record would match the information you have in your catalog that matches your physical labels and so on. So everything across your whole library matches. And this could also help you deal with the multiple genres for books in some situations, depending on the book. So rather than guessing which genre a book should be in, you have an authority record right here that tells you. Now, if you choose to select your genres using whichever of these methods or a method of your own, just keep in mind it's going to significantly increase the amount of time you need for your project. But as I said, genrefication is very time consuming and it's not a quick process. And it does require that you take your time to ensure that it's done to the best of your ability and you're providing the most accurate genres for readers. So again, it's just something to keep in mind if you're starting to get frustrated and thinking, oh my gosh, this is taking so long. It's supposed to, so it's okay. I want to take a little step back and just discuss space planning very briefly. So if you remember, I mentioned the issue of uncommon library standards, and this is where that starts to come into play. So when you select your genres, you are determining what standards you're going to use to label, catalog, and shelve your books. And we've talked a little bit about labeling, and it raises some questions like, how are you going to organize materials to reflect the genres? Are you going to keep everything the same and only change the physical labels? Are you going to change it in your online catalog? And then it raises the question of, how are you going to shelve it? So you really have two basic options for shelving that are very popular. And the first one is genre neighborhoods. And this one might be a little bit more on the uncommon side for your library users. So with genre neighborhoods, you have each section separate for a genre. So you have all the fantasy together, all the sci-fi together, all the mystery together. And they're separated out like that. And sometimes that can be uncommon for your users if they're used to having everything just mixed together. Now they have a whole bunch of different areas they have to look at. Your other option is interfiling, and I would say that this is maybe the more common route because you're keeping how everything is shelved the same. So it's familiar for your users, but you're adding that physical label or some kind of identification to the book so that they can see what genre they fall into. So that's just a little bit of space planning I wanted to point out, because along with selecting your genres, how you shelve them and present them is something you do really need to consider. It's a very important part of it. So one huge advantage to genrefication is the ability to increase your reader's advisory skills. And this is a primary reason that many libraries use genrefication, because they're able to help users easily find what they're looking for really quick. So that reader's advisory is just top notch. However, as we know, there are some drawbacks to genrefication. So one thing you can do instead of genrefying your collection is just work on enhancing your reader's advisory skills. And even if you do genrefy your collection, maybe you want to improve your reader's advisory skills just so that you have them. And it's going to help you feel more confident at work, whether your collection is genrefied or not. It'll help you feel more confident. And there's a number of tools and resources that you can use to enhance your reader's advisory skills. And I'm going to show you a few of them now. So there's some that are actually available through YRL. And the first one we've already looked at is Novelist. And then we also have Novelist K-8, which is just for the grades K-8. So Novelist does provide read-alike suggestions. So if you're looking at a particular book that you read before, along the side, it does have some suggestions. It shows you all the genres and subjects associated with the particular book you're looking at. So you could search for similar books that way by selecting either a subject in the book you really liked or a genre. You can also browse Novelist by genre, and it also does sometimes recommend genres for you to search through as well. Track, actually, where you go in order and place holds on books, is another really great tool that you can use. You can actually search by genre on Track if you choose to. And I would encourage everybody, we have our Track Pack session on November 18th. I would really encourage everybody to attend that session, because you can learn more about how to use Track as a tool for searching in that respect. I also want to point you to in this session, Become a Pro at Using Novelist. It was advertised in our YRL newsletter. And it's on Tuesday, November 23rd. And this is really great if either you have the basic skills of Novelist or you want to learn them and you just want to become more familiar with using Novelist to better help your patrons find books they want, or even it could help you teach them how to use Novelist to the full benefit for themselves as well. So that's another really great option that's available to you. Now, there's a number of RA tools available out there for free or subscription, and these are a few of the most popular ones. So the first one is What Should I Read Next? And this allows you to find books that are similar to ones you've read in the past. And this can be very helpful if a patron comes in and they want a book that's exactly similar to a book they read, or maybe just slightly different and by a different author. And you can use this site for free if you just want to find a patron, help a patron find a book, sorry. Or you can also create a free account. So you can create book lists of books that you would like to read in the future. You can also sign up for a paid premium account to get more access to the features on the site. But if you just want to use it as a tool to help your library users find books they might want to read or suggest it to them, you can absolutely use it for free. Booklist is another RA tool that we actually use quite a bit here at Yellowhead, and you can use it for free or you can purchase a subscription to gain more access to features, but we found that most things are available for free. Now, as the name suggests, Booklist does provide book lists. It also has book reviews, it has articles, sometimes they have free webinars that cover a variety of book-related topics. They also do have book recommendations on their list as well. So again, for similar reads, if you're looking for those. And I said I would mention Goodreads again, and I'm going to mention it one more time because it is a very popular RA tool. I myself use it to find a lot of books that I want to read and create my own list. However, just remember, if you're using it for genrefying your collection, you have to keep in mind that the data is editable by users. So you just have to be a bit more objective when you're using it. However, Goodreads I found is really great for making book recommendations to help library users find books they want to read. And there are numerous other RA tools out there that you can use for free or for subscription. And I've shared some of the most popular ones that I've used or that I've heard used of in libraries. And they're very accessible to you, so they can help you start building and fine-tuning your RA skills. If you want to continue also developing and enhancing your reader's advisory skills, there's also free courses you can take. We have one on our niche academy, specifically for readers advisory. You can also learn how to use Novelist, and this you can access right on the Novelist website. It's just how to use Novelist, and it gives you the basics. And from there, you can build upon that training. Also, the Library Training and Learning Hub sometimes has available free readers advisory courses or just little training sessions as well. So there's lots of options. And additionally, I will say that I always recommend doing shelf reading in your library because that's one of the best ways to get acquainted with your collection. So either shelf reading or actually shelving your books, because knowing what titles you have in your collection, again, is going to boost your confidence and make you feel more confident at work. So that's a very quick overview of the genrefication process or de-genrefying if you want. There's a lot of advantages and drawbacks, and just remember that you do have to think objectively about the genrefication process and selecting your genres and all that, because there are a lot of variables to consider when it comes to genrefication. So if you have any questions, we can take them now. I will also share my contact information so that you can contact me if you would like specific questions. But thank you for coming today, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed it.